I don't know if you noticed, but in the most recent Chris Metzen interview, he not only confirmed that the removal of the Sword of Sargeras and Silithus is going to be a Last Titan event and we will see it, but he also strongly hinted that Illidan is going to be returning as well. If Sargeras the Jailer is coming, well then Sargeras is coming himself. Do you think it's ridiculous that Sargeras is even imprisoned at this point? I mean, we are here thinking that the Titans are the good guys, they're keeping the big bad guy in jail because he wanted to destroy the universe, and of course they only want to build it. However, by all the new lore, the Titans are not the good guys whatsoever, and while Sargeras is splitting planets with a sword, they are instead planting brainwashing mechanisms that will ultimately blow up the planet, accomplishing the exact same thing. I think the Sargeras Pantheon split was a big misunderstanding on how to deal with the Void, and as the Void is now actually destroying Azeroth through Xal'atath and the Pantheon obviously failed, I think they will embrace the radical measures of their new champion Sargeras. They will realize that he was right and he might just be rejoining the Titans, which leaves Illidan as once again the protector of Azeroth. What is all this news and what is going on? Actually playing WoW on your phone is now possible with Awesome, this video sponsor. It allows you to control your desktop from your phone completely free, which is perfect for checking in on your WoW characters when you're away from the keyboard. It's super easy to use, just click my link in the description, download the PC and the phone app and just connect them. The free version is great as you can control your desktop, but the real deal is the game version with custom keyboards for various games such as WoW with great FPS and sound as well. Make sure to use my code Doran to get 7 days completely free, only for the first 200 people. They also got a smart plug to turn off your PC at any time, as well as hot sales with up to 40% off on Pro and game versions. Check out Awesome. So it is pretty obvious that the Sword of Sargeras is a pretty big deal in the World Soul Saga. It essentially opened the cinematic, it was all over their promotional artwork on BlizzCon, yet a lot of people had wondered how does this even make sense. I mean, literally there are no hints of something happening with it in the War Within, and we are in Kazagar, which, while close, is not exactly connected, so why is the cinematic opening up the sword and we are not even going to Silithus? Well, we just got the answer in the newest Chris Metzen interview that he released on their own channel. Essentially, it boils down to the fact that this is a saga and this is an expansion unlike any other. The saga is, in fact, one gigantic expansion and these are like 3 chapters, so War Within is not really the culmination of anything, it is just the opening scene. Think of it as a trilogy and this is the first movie. Now, this is not my interpretation of it. Chris Metzen literally hinted in the new cinematic that the sword is going to be a big thing, a major thing, but that it is a 13 thing, meaning it is going to happen in The Last Titan 13.0, which is the final chapter of the saga. Now, I gotta say, honestly, the newest Chris Metzen interview is really one of the best things that came from Blizzard these past few years, and it really does seem like the passion is actually there and that they're legit cooking. It's not one of those like listening to feedback and then we get some mediocre story. Like, it really seems like they're cooking full steam and really trying to pull something amazing from this World Soul Saga, at least from a lore perspective. Now, there are a few things Chris hinted at in the interview which are really interesting, and this is something I've been talking about pretty much since the announcement of the World Soul Saga back on BlizzCon, and that is the half-confirmed return of Illidan, and by extension Sargeras, which is legit going to be one of the biggest comebacks we've had in a while. I don't know if you guys noticed this slight hint, but as he said that the removal of the sword is going to be a Last Titan thing, he said we are not prepared for this moment, which, if that is not a hint for Illidan coming back, then I don't know what is. Let me just bring you up to speed with what we currently know. So, a few months back we learned that the giant void crystal in Halifol first started turning into a void cycle as Sargeras plunged the sword at the end of Legion. Then we got a void arc talking about how the Titans and Sargeras are really not at all different, they just use different methods and Sargeras is more radical. Now there is obviously some sort of a big conspiracy going on where the void, the light, the Titans and Sargeras are coming or were coming for our planet and they knew something that we currently don't. I don't necessarily think Sargeras wanted to help the void with his crystal and help Xal'atath, but I think he wanted to start this current process because he knew he couldn't win and he just wanted to prove the Titans wrong. It was not at all about destroying Azeroth. I previously laid out this theory, but I do think we know nothing about Sargeras, or at least we don't have actual insider information. Pretty much the extent of our knowledge is that he was like this fallen angel type thing. He was a good, benevolent Titan ordering planets and then was driven crazy. He wanted to wipe it all out and undo all their work because he didn't believe the void Void can be wiped out without a Burning Crusade. However, that is almost certainly BS, because we're constantly learning now that the Titans are in fact massive liars and that they're essentially just using us. The recent Chronicle book states Azeroth is neutral, it can turn into a Void Thing as well as a Titan, so it isn't a Titan whatsoever, and all these Titan facilities are just one gigantic conversion mechanisms. Also, recent Orc Hermit guy told us that Sargeras and the Titans are really not that different. I think the entire theory that Sargeras was driven crazy by Fel and just started blasting might be BS. I think the entire Titan Pantheon Sargeras split was a misunderstanding on the strategy on how to deal with the Void, and that Sargeras wanted radical methods while the Titans thought they could do it their own way. The Titans are very sly. They're essentially constantly gaslighting you. They order planets, appear as these gods and creators and create everything, but God forbid you decide to question their methods and what they're really doing, because you will get purged. Slight spoilers from the War Within, but you're going to see what I'm talking about in the War Within questlines. Now, I think as Sargeras discovered the planet, he realized the Void can't really be contained by the way the Titans want to, which I think he is actually right about. Did you notice that pretty much all Titan prisons ultimately ended up failing over time? All the old gods essentially broke free, their followers turned to the Curse of Flesh, they seem to have hidden a fifth old god here in Kazakar that they couldn't even contain, but they lied about it. Remember, the lore states Sargeras realized this when he first encountered a world soul that was fully corrupted by the Void, and he just decided to split it in half. I think he had first-hand experience on what happens when the Void actually succeeds, and he realized that this is way beyond the scope of what the Titan methodology can accomplish. He needed to embrace the Fel and just go crazy. The Titans didn't really think this is the way. Now, of course, this is the known lore, but the difference was that I don't think Sargeras was actually crazy, like he was driven crazy. I think they ultimately wanted to do the same thing, and the Titans are not much different from the Burning Legion. They're just using different methods. I mean, sure, they don't split planets in half with a sword, but instead they plant a mechanism that will blow up the planet if the opposite cosmological force starts winning. Now, this here is where Illidan's return is almost guaranteed. Sarah saw some vision back in Legion beyond just the Burning Legion and this Burning Legion invasion, which is why she wanted to convert him for this future thing. At the time, Illidan believed Sargeras was the end-all be-all, which is why he dedicated his life to battling the Fel. However, all of that is just one single part of the puzzle. Remember, Sargeras was imprisoned by the Pantheon and Illidan remained as his jailer. All Illidan really wanted to do was to protect Azeroth. However, now that the Titans are coming as the villains, why exactly would he keep working as their servant? Furthermore, when you think about it, Illidan and Sargeras are really similar. Both were misunderstood and used radical methods and were imprisoned for that. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Sargeras was a good guy all along, we just misunderstood him destroying countless planets, but there is no way Illidan and Sargeras haven't been talking and that Sargeras filled him in on the manipulative nature of the Titans. Because of that, I'm almost certain Sargeras and Illidan are going to be returning in The Last Titan. I'm not saying they're coming here as Batman and Robin, the good guys, but I somehow feel like Sargeras might rejoin the Pantheon and that Illidan is going to be in a bit of a Maiev jailer scenario. One of the theories I previously mentioned was that the split happened because the Pantheon disagreed on how radical they need to go when it comes to removing the Void. Titans, at the time, figured out prisons and facilities and brainwashing will work. Sargeras disagreed and they had a big fight. Now, Sargeras plunged the sword as a more of a screw you, I was right to the Titans. Remember, the crystal turned the moment he struck, which Sargeras almost certainly knew about, and this started the Void conversion plan of Xal'atath that she's doing right now. Essentially, it was like, oh yeah, if you're going to imprison me, let me just trigger this and then you will see the true nature of the Void and that your prisons and mechanisms are absolute BS that is completely ineffective. Now, as Azeroth is actually getting converted throughout the saga, the Titans are going to see that he was right and that they need to embrace similar methods and that they will need to brute force Azeroth. This is exactly what Ridicron was talking about, that soon we will see the true nature of the Titans and how little they care about us. I do think it might be possible that they actually free Sargeras. I mean, it's even ridiculous that he's imprisoned when you really think about it. Just think about the fact that Sargeras is currently imprisoned by the Titan Pantheon, which are his own people, for seemingly ruining governing the universe, and there is literally only a few Titans in the entire universe. This, of course, all makes sense on the premise that the Titans want good for planets, hence they're keeping the bad guy in jail. However, all recent lore states that they don't. So Sargeras might just be becoming the new champion once again of the Titan Pantheon, and this time they're going to do it his way. This way, Illidan is essentially removed from his position, it becomes obsolete, and he needs to come back to Azeroth, which will all happen in the Last Titan. I can totally see an opening cinematic of Last Titan being Sargeras. He returns back to the fold and he comes back for his sword, and this brings back the return of Illidan. Now, while they did say the sword removal thing is a 13 thing, I don't think it will be built up then, despite the fact that we are not even going to Silthus right now. They're going to start talking about it every now and then. They already gave us a small hint that the crystal turned when Sargeras struck. I think we will get further and further hints over the years that will paint a more clear picture on what is really going on. So it really seems like something crazy exciting is going to be happening in the World Soul Saga. I know we have a lot of things that are coming out, but this is realistically a fact. By all accounts, we're going to see Azeroth Awakening, a possible giant Titan prison over the planet, the removal of the sword. All these events are going to be the biggest events that ever occurred in the history of the planet. Even the giant ones like the creation of the Black Empire or the Sundering were just really preparations or consequences of something like this finally happening. So the World Soul Saga from the lore perspective is going to be the craziest time ever for WoW lore. Thank you for watching. Check out my video on WoW 2 being possible by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Ancient Training on the second channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.